All right, and welcome, my friend, to the next episode here, the Red Delta Project podcast, taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise to give you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, and today's episode is sponsored by the brand new quick read that just got released on the RDP merch store and on the RDP Kindle store, because it's only available in Kindle because there's lots of links to it, for push, pull, and squat, one of the simplest and most direct ways to stimulate improving muscle and strength improvement in your workouts. So links to that is down below. It's only $5. It's probably the best $5 you're going to spend in the next, for the rest of the year, because there's only a few hours left, but definitely for 2023, that can send your workouts in a whole much simpler and easier trajectory to get the results you want. So let's dive right into it, shall we? We have 23 ideas here. These 23 ideas can make a big difference in your life. Not all of them, just even one can make a big difference, having a big ripple effect over a lot of your decisions and your actions into the new year. Because you only need one good idea to make a big difference in your life. And hopefully some of these, out of these 23, at least one of them will truly hit for you. So let's dive right into it, shall we? Number one, we talked about this in the Modern Day Superpowers episode, is that knowing what you truly want is a massive game changer for two reasons. One is it helps you refine your attention and direct your resources towards getting what you actually want, because a lot of times we struggle to get what we truly want because we're not clearly defining it. And it's not even so much about set, clear, defined goals and SMART goals and all of that. It's much more about what do you really want, so you can focus on the habits that are in alignment with those goals. And more importantly, you have the ability to say no to all of the other things that are not in alignment with those goals. Because there's a lot of great stuff out there. There's a lot of great workouts. There's a lot of great dietary strategies. There's 1,000,001 things you can do every single day, and most of them are really good. But that doesn't necessarily mean you should be doing them. In fact, you should be probably saying no or minimizing most of them, because the more we can clearly define what we want, the more we can identify the few habits and actions that are going to help you get what you truly want. So that's the first thing, is in the new year, you can sit down and just say, what do I truly want out of my workouts? What do I truly want out of my fitness? And be honest with yourself. It doesn't matter if 1,000,000 people say that being able to run a mile in a certain amount of time is the most important thing in the world. If it's not important to you, it's just simply not that important. Or how much you can lift, or if you have six-pack abs. If it's not important to you, it's not important. But if that is something that's really important to you, it's like, oh, that's my absolute dream, then get clear on that, so that way you can focus on it. So that's probably one of the best ways that you can get started in the 2023. Let's go with number two here. Number two, change is terminal, my friends. And I mean that in kind of a bit of a morbid way, but it's really more about recognizing what are you willing to kind of let go of in order to change and improve your life beyond where you are now. Because a lot of times change isn't actually all that hard. It's in many cases almost something that you want to do. You run towards it. But a lot of us are running with the brakes on, where we have emotional friction towards the habits we should be taking because we're holding on to something in our past lives, our past self, something that is like, yeah, but I was always this way, or I did this certain way when I was a kid, and so on. And we're holding on to old adages of who we are, how we think we are, right? So think about it this way. When was the last time someone asked you why you do what you do? And you're just like, but that's how I always do it. Or you could say, well, this thing happened 10, 20, 5 years ago, or hell, even several months ago. And you're like, I do it because this person said this thing, or because I need to be able to do this thing for this reason, or what have you. How many people are still holding on to habits that they developed when they were in school, or habits that they kept with a certain social group that they're no longer in touch with? The fact of the matter is, whenever we're looking at big changes in our lives, some part of your past is going to have to die. You're going to have to let go of something. It doesn't mean you're necessarily pretending it didn't exist, but you do have to kind of transcend it a little bit. And this is something I certainly experienced quite often this past year, where I did a lot of personal growth and development on my end, changing who I was and improving my personality and so forth. And I noticed that in order to do that, I had to really let go a lot of adages and ways that I thought of myself. I'm always this kind of person. I'm always that type of person. I never do this sort of thing because I'm not that kind. Yeah, no more. It's like, yeah, I used to be that kind of person. I used to have that kind of behavior. That's not who I am anymore. The person I used to be with those habits is dead. The person I am now and the person I'm developing into can only be born from the terminal consequence of my old self. So don't forget that change is terminal. You can't have the type of life or the body or the fitness you want in the future unless you're willing to let go of some aspects of what you have right here. Sniff Rat's in the house. Leo's in the house as well. Thanks very much, folks. Very appreciated coming on. These are, again, 23 life-changing lessons for a stronger 23. Speaking of 3, this is number 3. Number 3 is use flexibility in your approaches. And this goes beyond diet and exercise, of course, but especially when it comes to what's your workout like? What's your diet like? The more regimented we become, the less pliable we are in our habits. And it's very tempting to have a very strict, structured, regimented approach to anything in life because it gives us the false sense of security and control. Like, oh, if I have this type of program and I stick to it and I never change it, then I'm sure I can have control over how I look or how I perform or how much muscle I have. Same thing with diet. If I have this really strict diet and I never change anything and I stick to it like glue, that'll give me full control over my weight or my health and whatnot. But the fact is, this control is purely an illusion because the outcomes that we're looking for in life, and especially fitness, are determined on many, many, many influences and factors, some of which you have no control over whatsoever. Some influences you have some control over, and others you can certainly have a good amount of control. But more importantly, rigid and structured or hyper-structured approaches typically break rather than bend. Because life, of course, is an ever-changing and evolving sequence of events. Sometimes you have more time, since you have less. Sometimes you have more motivation, sometimes you have less. Sometimes you can do certain exercises, other times it's not going to happen. And a rigid approach is essentially saying, I don't care what's going on in your life, you have to do things this certain way, even if it's no longer in your best interest. But when you have a more flexible and pliable approach, you can adapt your approaches to fit your current circumstances. So not only does that make things a lot easier on mind, body, and lifestyle, but it also makes it a lot more powerful. So you're actually doing what you should be doing for the greatest impact and getting the best possible results. Because any structured or super rigid approach to anything is probably not going to be all that effective much of the time. But when you're flexible, now you can adjust things to actually fit your requirements. All right, number 4, this again, 23 things that can change your life in 2023. Number 4, it's okay to be mediocre, especially if it's at things that are still getting the job done. And this one is kind of combating a lot of the perfectionist attitude. Nothing is more toxic to many fitness enthusiasts than the perfectionist attitude. I've got to be the best at everything, or I've got to do it to the best of my ability. But the fact of the matter is, you're probably not going to be very good at most things in life. I mean, hell, even in the calisthenics world, there's a ton of exercises I just flat out suck at. And I'm perfectly fine with that because I frankly just don't care. You know, I can't really do a muscle up very well. The skills component of calisthenics, not important to me. Therefore, it's not important. Therefore, I'm not even mediocre at it. And that's perfectly okay. And this is something we want to be able to embrace because the more you get dialed in on that first principle of learning what you really want, the more you're going to put your time and energy and attention towards attaining that, which means you're going to have to sacrifice your proficiency in other areas. It's just a natural law of economics. The more you put towards one thing, the less you have for other things. So that's why we want to give ourselves permission to be okay and mediocre, or not even very good at other things. Because when we accept that, yeah, I'm probably never going to be able to do a 180-degree split, or I'm probably never going to be able to juggle flaming chainsaws while walking a tightrope over Niagara Falls, the more pressure you can take off of yourself to say, yeah, but that's okay, because it's simply not important to me. You don't have to be elite. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet that's like mediocrity is for losers, and it's a slow, painful death, mediocrity, and good is the enemy of great, and all this sort of thing. It's complete nonsense, because we're all going to be mediocre at best at most everything in life. Even the best athletes in the world are only very good at the respective sports. There was a TV show years ago. My dad was telling me about this, how they would take these high-level sports athletes like Joe Jackson and stuff, and they would put them in circumstances that are kind of outside their comfort zone, and they'd be terrible at it. They took I think it was Joe Montana, and they took him bowling, and he was like the worst bowler in the world, and he was getting his tail beat by everybody. But he was Joe Montana. No one cared because he was the best football player at the time. So don't be afraid to be mediocre. It's perfectly fine and okay, especially when it's like, yeah, I'm a mediocre cook, but I still make really good food that I enjoy. I don't need to invest more resources into becoming a better cook, because frankly, that's just a waste of time and energy. If you're meeting your requirements and getting your goals met from what you want from your habits, you don't need to become any better. And this especially is very important with fitness, because a lot of us, we don't need to be super elite level athletes, Captain Americas, to get the results we want. A lot of us are probably going to be perfectly happy with a, quote, mediocre level of strength and performance and so on. And that's a lot easier to maintain. And it's probably going to be all most of us need to live the life that we actually want, so you can put your resources towards the things that are important to you. All right, people coming on in. It's very good to see everybody. I hope you have a very good New Year. Michael, Drop Weight Daddy's coming on. Question: Hey Matt, I can't do muscle ups either, but I'm on the best shape of my life at 52. Hell yeah, my friend. Very, very good that you can recognize that the best shape in your life can always be in front of you in many ways, because that depends on many different variables as well. Andres saying, hey there, Matt. I'm glad that I'm here. You are my number one role model in fitness. Well, thank you so much, man. I do sincerely appreciate that. I've been getting a lot of love these days from folks writing in emails and stuff, especially about how my latest push-pull squat program has been helping people out. And I always appreciate that, because especially, in the creative world, we put out these podcasts and these books and stuff, and we just kind of send it out into the ether. And it's like, I hope this is making an impact on people's lives. So I always appreciate it when you folks let me know that it's been very helpful. Mariana is coming on. Hey, Matt, thanks for all not only fitness wisdom you bring into your life. Happy New Year. Spanish greetings from Germany. Outstanding. God, I got to get myself back to Germany someday. Love that country. Really good food, really good beer. All right, let's roll on here. Number 5 of 23 ideas that can change your life in 2023. Number 5 is motivation is, in fact, very real and super important for your success. And this is counteracting, again, a lot of these ideas and memes on the internet. That's like, oh, motivation's not important, and I don't care about motivation. I'm disciplined and all that. That's all complete hogwash. Because the fact of the matter is, we human beings are fundamentally emotional creatures. Everything about our lives is largely determined by our emotional state, not our intellectual state. And because of that, motivation is very much our emotional balance sheet between our perceived cost to the perceived reward of our behaviors. So if you're using particular diet and exercise habits and the perceived cost is high and the perceived reward is low, your motivation is going to tank. And when your motivation tanks, good luck getting anything done. It's going to take a hell of a lot more effort to do even a fraction of the actual productive work towards your objective. However, when your motivation is high, good luck holding yourself back. It's going to be far easier to be so much more productive when motivation is high. And that's why I have a whole chapter in my upcoming new book that I just started working on the other day on how to improve and work on motivation. Because without it, you're screwed. I would rather have both of my legs broken than to lose my motivation to eat right and exercise. Because at least if I have both legs broken, I still have the emotional fuel tank to still take action to some degree. I'll be like, I could still do pull-ups, on the bar. I could still cook healthy meals. But when the motivation to do those things plummets, Doesn't matter. You could be in the picture perfect health. You could have everything going for you. You're not going to do anything. You're going to be DOA as far as your actions go. So motivation is very important. It is something we should definitely be working to cultivate at all times. And if you don't have much motivation, because we all have ebbs and flows with it, of course, acute loss of motivation happens. But when you have a chronic loss of motivation, that needs to be addressed just as much as you would address a serious injury like a broken leg. It's a very, very serious thing that has to be taken care of. All right, number 6 here. Number 6 is always assess your cost to benefit ratio, right? So this is going right along with number 5, because our motivation is based on how much we believe we're getting out of a certain behavior and habit versus how much it is costing us. And this is very much about perception too. Like you could have, for example, a gym membership that's $1,000 a month. And for some people, that's perfectly reasonable. That's like, yeah, that's great. I once sat down at a conference table with a gym owner, and his gym catered to like elite celebrities and stuff. And it was $27,000 a year to belong to that gym. And he's like, yeah, we've got like a 3-year waiting period or a waiting list because people are lining up for us. It was all inclusive, all, services, everything you could want, one price. And it was $27,000 a year. But other people, you give them something that is relatively cheap and they'd be like, no, I don't really have any perceived benefit of doing that. So even if that membership was like $5 a month, people would be like, I don't want to do it, because it's all about the perception of the cost to the benefit ratio. Now I say here, always be proactively assessing that cost to benefit ratio, because much of the time we're doing it completely on subconscious autopilot. All right. We're just kind of letting our subconscious assess what's worth doing and what isn't. And therefore, we're not really in control of our motivation levels. And that's why a lot of times we struggle with motivation to do certain things. But when we are looking at things with a proactive approach, I usually recommend just take a piece of paper, and on the left side, take a hat, or you have a habit at the top. On the left, you're like, okay, what are the things I get out of this? Let's say, for example, day drinking, right? So what do you get out of it? Even if it's like, oh, it's bad for you, it's everything. No, but you do it for a good reason. Even the worst habits in the world are done for good reason. So what do you get out of this? It makes me feel good. It takes the edge off. It helps numb the pain from my recent divorce, whatever kind of thing. All the benefits down on the benefits column. And then what are the costs to it? What are the things that is costing you? And be very, very liberal about this. Just have everything. It's like, oh, it's making me gain weight. I feel like crap in the morning. I'm always hungover. I feel like I don't see my friends anymore. Everything between those two. And that can help you get a little bit more of a bead on what the actual cost to benefits are of these habits. And then you can look at these and be like, well, which ones can I possibly change? What ones can I maybe alter around? Like, okay, I hate going to the gym, because it's a long distance to travel. It's like, okay, what about a gym that's closer to you? So you can minimize the costs and increase the benefits, and motivation will increase accordingly or decrease depending on if it's a habit that you want to start to walk away from, sort of similar to the day drinking. Kind of like me doing this podcast here. Like I get a huge amount of benefit from this, talking to you guys. It's one of the most rewarding things I do all week. So just doing this for me is a lot of fun, even though it costs me time and it costs me money. And it's, an hour or so outside of every Saturday afternoon for me. I could be out doing 100 other things. So yeah, it's costing me a lot, but the benefits I get from it are so high that I'm always motivated to do this sort of thing. All right, moving on. Number 7, we keep cracking on here. The 23 ideas to change your life in 2023. Number 7 is seek efficiency when it comes to performance and inefficiency when it comes to physical conditioning. And this is very, very important, because when it comes to how we're using our body as far as exercise goes, what we're trying to do is accomplish 2 different goals if your goal is performance versus stimulus. Okay? Now with performance, that's like if you're an athlete. Like I want to run a faster 5K, or I want to be able to do so many push-ups to pass a PT test, or something along those lines. Whenever your goal is, I want to be able to do this thing as much as possible or as well as possible according to a certain metric, then you want efficiency up the wazoo. You want to make the exercise as easy as possible. You want to use the easiest technique. You want to do everything you can to bump up those numbers, because that's how you win the sport, how you pass the PT test, how you are accomplishing those metrics. However, if your goal is fitness, you're like, I want to get stronger, I want to build muscle, I want to lose weight, I want to do all these other sorts of things. Efficiency is the total opposite of what you want. Because in order to change the body, we need to subject it to an effective progressive stimulus. And it's not always entirely about stress, but it can be stressful. But it's more about telling the body it needs to be able to handle a certain type of demanding functional application. And the more demanding that application is, the greater the stimulus is for change. But the thing is, the more efficient you are in your practice, the harder it is to create that stimulus. So let me give you another example, right? In the bike racing world, right? So when I was a bike racer, I used to have more of a conditioning aspect to when I would race, because I would have a really hard gear on my bike and I would always remain seated. And I would basically just grind out the gears because I wanted my legs to work as hard as possible. I wanted my heart rate to be sky high. I wanted to be absolutely smashed by the end of the race. And unsurprisingly, I didn't do so well in the races because I was trying to condition myself. I was riding as if I was trying to get in better shape. But my fellow teammates would tell me, Matt, go down a couple gears, spin out a little bit. Draft other people so you don't have to work as hard. Stand up on certain sections so that way you're using your upper body and you're not just burning out your legs so much. Did it make it easier? Yes. Was it more efficient? Yes. Did I win more races? Absolutely. It made me a lot better as a biker. Was it better for my physical conditioning? Absolutely not. Although with bike racing, you're always working as hard as possible. But it's these two perspectives we want to have depending on your goals. If your goal is proficiency and you want to be able to do the thing to a higher number of metrics, reps or weight or whatever, you want efficiency. Make it easy on yourself. And we normally do this subconsciously too. You give someone that's like, okay, I'm going to do, a 1,000 push-up challenge or something. You look at their push-ups, inevitably they're easy push-ups. They're not very big. They're not deep. Their hands are fairly wide. Maybe they're just kind of getting a lot of range of motion in the neck. They're usually not doing things very well as far as difficulty goes. But when it comes to conditioning, we want the opposite. We want the push-ups to be hard. It's like my 10 rep challenge I often give people. And people are like, I could do 10 reps. I'm like, I know, that's the problem. If you can do an exercise for more than 10 reps, we're going more efficient. I want you to make it inefficient. So you can't do 10 reps or you can't last very long doing the exercise. Because when we make the exercise inefficient, it's a lot easier to create a stimulus for faster and greater adaptation in the body. So it's always about, what are you doing? Are you going for conditioning or are you going for performance? One should embrace efficiency for performance and the other should embrace inefficiency for conditioning. All right, moving on. Number 8, if it's not important to you, it probably isn't important at all. This again goes along with what I was saying earlier when it comes to selecting your goals and aspirations, because everybody's going to be telling you what is supposedly important, especially in fitness. Like, oh, you've got to be able to do this. You got to be able to do that. Oh, if you can't do this, then you're not strong and you're not in shape and you don't have good endurance and so on. But the fact is, like I said earlier, you're not going to be very good at most things in life, especially when it comes to fitness. So it's all about being able to prioritize how you spend your resources towards the things that are important to you. And unless something is required, which is very rarely the case, like, again, a PT test, like I got to be able to do 100 push-ups in 2 minutes or something. It's like, okay, then you have to be able to do that in order to pass the PT test. It's a requirement. But most of us never have any such requirements when it comes to fitness. It's usually more of just preferences and what do we personally want. And in that case, it's much more down to just what's important to you. Some people, the most important thing is how much you bench, squat, and deadlift. Other people, they're like, I couldn't possibly care less if how much I bench, squat, and dead. Well, then it simply isn't that important to you. But of course, you're going to have those people who it is important to tell you otherwise. Like, no, this is very important. You have to be able to adhere to my standards of what's important to me. And we all kind of do this, but it's simply just a simple self-projection upon the other person. It's not done a lot of times with malice or an evil intent. It's just simply we're projecting. It's like, this is the most important thing to me. I've given my life to being able to run a faster marathon. And this person here is telling me they don't care at all if they can even run. We have trouble recognizing that and letting them do their own thing. But they could be saying something like, yeah, well, it's very important to me that I can rock climb a certain route. And I could be like, dude, why are you even climbing the rock there for? Just drive to the top of the mountain, like kind of thing. Priorities are subjective and they're individual to one person to the other. So if it's not important to you, it's simply not something that may be all that important. All right, let's see if we got some more questions here we can address. Let's see. Joseph is just quick in saying, Matt, thanks for all your great content and book. Happy New Year to you and yours. Thank you very much. Had a great time in Vermont with my family, by the way, and they all ask sometimes about you guys. They're like, how's everybody in RDP going? And it's like, everybody's doing good. Thank you much for asking. Someday I should have them on here. Friends and family. All right, moving right along. We got to hurry this up a little bit here. Number 9, the work you do is not the goal. Achieving the fundamental objective of your goal is. This one especially applies to fitness, but you can also apply to other things, because the fact of the matter is most people don't give a damn about how hard you work. And to a certain degree, your success doesn't depend on how much work you do. And this goes a little bit more into the details of like your workouts, like how many sets you should do, or how long you should work out for, or how many miles should you run, and all these other sorts of things. Unless the goal you have is actually the amount of work, like I want to be able to run 10 miles or whatever, don't get too hung up on how much work you're doing. Should it be more work? Should it be less work? How much work should I be doing versus this? How many exercises and stuff? Instead, look at just saying, how much work do I need to do to accomplish the fundamental objective that's responsible for my results? And most people have no idea what that is. So as a result, we're essentially just kind of guessing. We're like, well, if I do this much work, will it make me build muscle? Will I build strength and lose weight if I do this much work, kind of thing? And there's always no way to know. Typically, yes, more work is correlated to better results, but not always. A lot of times more work is just more wasted time, wasted energy, wasted effort. I look back on the days when I used to have these long drawn out workouts, these overcomplicated diets, and I look at that as mostly a complete waste of my time. It's like, man, if I could go back in time, I would have done things a whole lot different. And I probably wouldn't have done 90% of all the stuff that I used to do, just because it didn't have anything to do with the fundamental objective that was responsible for my goals. And I cover those objectives a lot more in my book, Micro Workouts, but it's more about understanding, again, what do you really want to accomplish? And then in every workout you're doing, like, what can you do to get to that goal? In my push-pull-squat program I just released, the goal of the strength phase is to practice being strong, to practice having strength in the technique. And you just do that as much as you can or as much as you want for the workout. Sometimes that'll happen for only a couple sets and then you start to burn out. Sometimes you could get 5 or 6 sets. Great, awesome. The goal is not how many sets you do. The goal is how strong can you be in the technique? How strong can you do the exercise? And if you can do that better, you accomplish that fundamental objective. And however much work it takes to do that is however much work it takes to do that for the day. So the work is not the goal. Achieving the fundamental objective is. Number 10, don't get hung up on one method unless the method is part of your goal. Okay, so this goes for a lot of things where people are like, oh, this is the best way to do this. This is the best exercise. This is the best type of training, the best diet and stuff. Remember, your results do not depend on the method you use unless the result is the method itself. If you want to be able to pass the RKC snatch test, you got to get really good at kettlebell snatches and being able to do 100 of them in 5 minutes. If you want to run a marathon, you've got to be able to run distance. But if your goals are more general, like I just want to have explosive power or I want to have endurance, those things are not at all in the slightest bit necessary. Sure, you can use them to that end, absolutely. But you don't have to do them if they're out of alignment with your preferences and your resources and your skills. So don't get too hung up on any particular method because there's a lot of messages out there like this is the best way to accomplish this goal. No, it's not. It's the best way that they are accomplishing their goal, whoever's giving you that advice. But it doesn't matter if you've got 1,000 people saying pull-ups are the greatest back and biceps exercise. If you hate pull-ups with a passion, or you've got some sort of an injury that prevents you from doing it, and you're like, I'm going to do band rows instead. Well, then you do band rows instead. Don't worry about any particular method. Don't get hung up too much on a particular tool. All right. Moving right along. Number 11, eliminate unnecessary discomfort and effort in your methods. This is one I wish I knew back in the day, because discomfort is always going to cost you. It's going to cost you attention and energy and effort. You're always going to be able to perform better when you are more comfortable. And a big example, again, comes from the world of bike racing. Everything on my mountain bike is about comfort. The way the saddle is designed, the handlebar is designed, my shocks, my brakes, the position I have on my mountain bike, it's all about comfort. Everything about that mountain bike is comfort. Because if I have blisters on my hands, if I'm in an uncomfortable position, if I don't have much traction on my tires, my saddle is uncomfortable, all that's going to do is slow me down. All that is going to do is make it harder to ride a bicycle, and not in a good way. It doesn't make me any stronger or more fit or tougher even, because whenever you're applying yourself with your exercise and your exertion, it's always going to be as much as you can put forth. So when we have unnecessary discomfort in things, that's just simply adding the cost to things. That's also adding to the cost that is decreasing your motivation to do things. So I'm always a big fan of do things that are more comfortable. Like over here in the background, I've got gymnastics rings and I've got suspension straps. Almost always I'm going to use suspension straps, because I just feel like gymnastics rings are not a very comfortable thing for my hands to be using. A regular straight handle is always a lot more comfortable for me to be pressing against. So that's why I use it, purely because it's more comfortable. And because it's more comfortable, I will definitely be able to push myself harder, just even a tiny little bit. So pay attention to those things that are ever so slightly uncomfortable, like a shirt that doesn't fit quite right, or shoes that kind of give you a blister if you run more than a few miles or something along those lines. Anything you can do to become more comfortable while you're training is probably going to make it easier to, again, create that progressive stimulus that is responsible for better results. All right, number 12, and then we'll get to some more questions. Number 12, understand you're never fully in control. This is a bitter pill to swallow, but I promise it's one of the more liberating things you can understand as well. Because remember that when it comes to your strength, your health, your weight, all the things that we're trying to accomplish here in fitness, there's a million different influential variables that go into producing that result. And you can't control all of them. Hell, we don't even know what many of them are. Right? We're still trying to figure out a lot of the variables in calorie balance and weight management. So recognizing that we're not fully 100% in control gives us the ability to recognize that I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to apply myself when and where I can, but at the same time, recognizing that you can't have full control. So you take that expectation off your plate, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to be fully in control of something and you're not, or you can't have full control over that, because there's always influences outside of your control. You know, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and they were saying how they were so frustrated that they couldn't get a relationship to work the way they wanted to. And I told them, it's like, 100% of your effort is still only 50% of the relationship. The other 50% is on their end. So you can do everything right. You can do everything that you can and put all the effort into it. But if it's not happening on their end and they're just a total jerk or a loser or stuff, that's not something you can control. That's not something you have any influence over. So do what you can, but also it makes it easier to walk away when you're like, this is all I've got and it's still not enough. And then you can move on and focus your attention towards the things that are more important. All right, lots of happy New Year's coming on in. Let's see what else we can got. Joseph is saying, hey, Matt, I make changes always. I cannot do pull-ups on handstand or handstand push-ups. I do short workouts, 30 minutes, calisthenics, push-up, pike push-up, squats, rows, bicep, tricep exercises with exercises finish with 2 minutes of abs. Yeah, exactly. It's about the flexibility, my friends. It's about being able to do what you can with what you have, as my grandfather always said. He always had that little saying going around, and it was such, growing up, you never really pay much attention to it. You're like, yeah, okay, do what you can with what you have kind of thing. But now as I get older, it's like, oh my gosh, that's totally the way we should often live our lives, because we're all very limited in our scope of application. We can all only do so much. 100% of your effort is only a tiny percentage of the influence responsible for the fundamental processes that are governing your health and fitness. Nobody's fully in control of everything about their life or their fitness. But that doesn't mean you can't have more control than you currently have. Someone who has no control or very little regard to their diet, and suddenly they're like, I'm going to start eating better. And they're more mindful about how they shop, and they're more mindful about cooking and not eating out as much. They're getting more control over their diet. Does that give them full control over their weight and everything? No. And if we're always looking for what's the thing that's going to give me full control, well, you're going to be looking for a long time, because nothing will. Nothing's going to give you that full control. And a lot of marketers out there will play on that desire. It's kind of almost more implied, not even so much outright stated, but if you use our diet, if you use our supplements, or if you use our workout program, that's going to give you the control you want. It might give you more control. It might help, for sure. It could be a quality product, but will it give you full absolute control? No, because nobody has that unless you can control Mother Nature, in which case I want to talk to you and make some things happen. All right, let's wrap this up. Last couple, several here. Number 13, you can't hack Mother Nature. That's right along what I was saying. Mother Nature is the one in control of the universe, and she's the one in control of our fitness, because fitness is a natural process. And we can't control these things. Mother Nature is. But the more we can understand how those processes of Mother Nature actually work, the more we can then engineer our habits, our diet and exercise programs to work within alignment of those processes to get better results and, yes, have more control. Number 14, adopting an anecdotal awareness. This is a very, very important thing, because a lot of times in our fitness culture, we base a lot of what we're doing on, evidence-based, the research stuff. Well, this study says this, and this study says that, and that study says this sort of thing. And it's good to get this information, but it's by no means enough or complete, because it can give us a very narrow perspective, which is often very limited about reality. So let me give you an example. Years ago, I listened to a podcast. This is back when I was in all of my fad dieting phases. And these two guys, they were all about low carb everything. Low carb, carbs are the devil. Carbs will kill you. Carbs are responsible for every ill health thing and all these other sorts of stuff, like carbs, bad, 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 bad. And then in one episode, one of them was talking about how they took a trip to some South American country. And they were like, well, how was it trying to stick to a low carb diet? I'm like, dude, it was almost impossible, because all they did down there was they ate lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, and they had a lot of, corn and rice based foods, a lot of beans and rice, tortillas, that sort of thing. So it's really, really hard to stick to a low carb diet, very high carbohydrate. And inevitably, one of the hosts asked the question that we're all thinking. And they said, so these people are all they're pretty fat and they're pretty sick and everything. Is like, no, actually, these people are in great health. I didn't see a single obese person when I was there. They all have a pretty good life expectancy. They're all very healthy and, very vitality and all that sort of thing. And those guys, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then they just went right back into their regular podcast of yes, this is, the reason why you need to hack carbs out of your diet. And I was sitting there going, guys, open your eyes. You are in a country literally surrounded by millions of people who are an anecdotal evidence to the complete opposite of everything you're talking about. And this is why we want to have this type of awareness, because I don't care what happened to some mice in the lab or what a certain study says to a particular method. We want to look at what's going on around us all the time to further understand what reality is. Okay? One more example real quick. I was in a conference one time for YouTubers, and we were all discussing about how, many subscribers on your YouTube channel should you have in order to become successful. And they did a study, and they found that out of all these people in the room, only 2% had more than 30,000 subscribers. Everyone else was lower than that. And again, I'm looking around going like, okay, everyone here has a very relatively low subscriber count. One, I'm in the wrong room. And two, this idea of, oh yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to get 1 million subscribers on YouTube. It's like, if that's not happening most of the time, what do you think the chances are that it's going to actually happen to you? Because I know we all think we're special, that we're going to beat the odds, that we're going to be the 1% that's going to make it. But probably not. 99% of us are not going to be in the 1% of anything in life. So we have to recognize that anecdotally, we're going to get much more of an awareness of what reality is versus some sort of a pipe dream that is often fed to us in order to try and get us to oftentimes buy into programs or belief systems and stuff. When if we just kind of open our eyes and become more aware to how everything else is going on around us, that's the reality that we actually have to live in. So an anecdotal awareness of life is number 14. Number 15, focus on what's necessary rather than what's supposedly effective. This is the thing that totally changed everything about my entire approach to health and fitness. Is when I focused on what was necessary, I was able to understand things on a more of a fundamental approach. And instead of saying, well, this study says this is effective and this study says this other thing is effective. Great, fine, whatever. There's a million things that are effective out there. You can lose weight and build muscle and get stronger 100 different ways. Just because it's effective doesn't mean it's necessary. And a lot of times when we hear these evidence-based approaches, we kind of subliminally come away with the belief of, well, proof of validity is proof of necessity. You can give me all the research in the world about a particular diet, but I don't care. All I care about is, do I have to do that thing? Because there's only two good reasons to do anything when it comes to health and fitness. It's either desired or required. And if it's not required, aka not necessary, which it almost never is, then it only depends on, do you want to do it? Do you generally just want to use that method? And if you don't, you're like, yeah, I'd love to stay in shape and not have to give up Mexican food. Well, then don't do that. There's no good reason whatsoever to do things you don't want to do if you don't have to do them to achieve your goal. And most of the time, a particular method is not at all necessary. So focusing on what is necessary, which usually has nothing to do with your method, but rather the fundamental processes of mother human nature, that's what's important. And then you can then have the freedom to do things as you see fit and as you want. That's how you be fit and live free, as I say. All right, number 16, discipline is not about, misspoke there. Talking about discipline. So we were talking about motivation earlier, about it's very important and extremely vital, and that no, your discipline cannot replace motivation. You're like, I have discipline. I don't need to be motivated. No, that's not how it works. You cannot have discipline in the basic sense without motivation. It's impossible. And here's why, is because fundamentally, discipline is all about being able to make productive and appropriate choices, decisions. Now, oftentimes we look at obedience as being discipline, but obedience is actually the opposite, because obedience is not about making decisions. It's about doing what you're told. Someone says jump and you jump. You're not saying, well, should I be jumping, or, is this really the appropriate thing, and deciding whether you should jump or not. No, they say jump, you jump. That's obedience. And that might be a little bit painted in a negative context, but it's not always, because there are definitely times when obedience is a good thing, where it's very important. For example, when you're a rank beginner, if I take a scuba diving class and I don't know anything about scuba diving, and the dive master says, you better surface right now, I'm going to surface. I'm not going to be like, no, I've got plenty of air. I think I'm okay. No, let's talk. No, their experience. I'm a rank beginner. I recognize I don't really entirely know what I'm doing, even though I think I might. So when they say surface, I surface. And then we get on the boat and they're like, yeah, there was like a great white circling you and you've got a cut on your wrist or something. It's like, you better, we don't want decisions in that. We want to follow those who know better than us. But the more we experience and the better we have with proficiency in level things, the more we want to make our own choices. And discipline is often thought about as always doing the hard thing, but it's not always. It's about doing the more appropriate thing. What is the best thing in this circumstance? Sometimes that's the hard thing. Sometimes it's doing the thing we're not entirely too thrilled to do. And yeah, that's discipline. But also discipline is also about saying, I've earned this chocolate chip cookie today. I'm going to sleep in tomorrow because I'm not really feeling all that well. And I could go to the gym, but I honestly think that's not the best thing because I kind of feel like I'm coming down with a cold a little bit, and going into that HIIT class may not be the best thing. I'm going to sleep in. That's not lazy. That's being disciplined. It's about doing the appropriate thing and making the call for your own actions. So be disciplined when you can and obedient when you have to be. All right, number 17, problem solving is a modern day superpower. Again, I covered this one in the same episode where I talked about establishing what you really want. Because the fact is that most of the solutions that you need just simply don't exist yet. They're not on the internet. They're not here on YouTube or anything. There's something that we have to piece together and constantly evolve and curate over time. And this is a problem-solving attitude. We have to look at our resources, look at the circumstances, and have creative ability to say, okay, I think I may do this to solve this problem. And that's how we achieve some of the best results, is through creative problem solving, not following a workout program to the letter or sticking to a diet no matter what. Again, it comes down to discipline, saying, okay, based on these circumstances, based on my experience, and based on what I can do, I've created this novel solution, and it's probably going to work really well. So being a problem solver is something that I think is eroding a lot these days, because we kind of think, well, TikTok's going to solve all my problems, or the internet's going to give me all the answers I need in life. Sure, if you need to quickly find out who the 13th president of the United States was or something, yeah, you can just simply Google that. But when it comes to actually solving the big issues that we have in the world, those solutions don't exist yet. And we have to create them through creative problem solving. All right, 18, seek help, preferably one-on-one. So this is advice I give a lot of people when they ask me, like, I don't know quite what's going on, especially when it comes to injury and stuff. What should I do? A lot of times my advice is see someone in person about this, because I've got so much of a distance on the internet here. It's like, there's no way I can know what's wrong with your shoulder. There's no way I can understand why your back is having this issue with it. Hell, even in person, sometimes I don't even know, and I have to refer out. Someone's like, oh man, this shoulder's really bothering me and stuff. It's like, I've got a really good chiropractor I highly recommend. They know more about these sorts of things than I do. So go and see them. And yeah, I know that's not as easy as just entering a Google search, but it is a hell of a lot more direct and a lot more effective, because they can get eyes on exactly what the problem is and give you a solution much quicker than if you're trying to solve it on your own. So don't be afraid to seek help, preferably in person, one-on-one if you can. Number 19, proficiency is the foundation of all success in life. So again, this goes down to how hard are you working? I'm busting my tail so hard and everything. It's like, yeah, okay, good. Hard work is very important. But ultimately, your success, especially when it comes to your physical training, is going to come largely down to your proficiency in the training, as opposed to how hard you're working at it. And this is something we've all kind of had a subconscious thought about, because you see someone who's really, really successful and they make it look easy, don't they? Whether it's in sales, or they can just go up to anyone at the bar and flirt with them. And it's like, God, they make it look so easy and stuff. Yeah, because they're really, really good. They're really good at what they do. They're comfortable with it. Again, comfort, very important. And they're really proficient at it. They have the skills. They've developed them over time. And with that proficiency, not only does it make it a lot easier to achieve better results, but also maintain those results as well. So that's why I'm always saying, whenever it comes to achieving better results, our objective should be, I'm trying to do this thing better. I'm trying to get better at this exercise, better at using my body, better at cooking satisfying meals. Even small little things can make such a big difference. Like I add jalapenos now to my salad. It's like, oh, this is such a tasty salad now. It's like, great. Yeah, I'm better now at making salads. Therefore, my salads are great. They kick butt. And because of that, I'm eating more salads now. So get good at what you're doing. A lot of times, the reason why we're struggling to get the results we want is just simply we're not good enough at what we're doing. It doesn't matter what program you're using. It doesn't matter what approach you're using. If you're not very good at using your muscles for stability and coordination to do an exercise, you're never going to get very far with it. But the second you improve that proficiency, and that's what grind style calisthenics is all about, everything gets a hell of a lot better. I talk about neuromuscular proficiency in my book, Overcoming Isometrics, for good reason. You improve your neuromuscular proficiency of how well you can engage and use your muscles, everything you do will be better and more effective. Every exercise, no matter how you do it, no matter what your program is, you improve your neuromuscular proficiency, every workout you do will improve. But if your neuromuscular proficiency is pretty low, nothing you do will ever work. It will be a battle and a struggle to build muscle and strength constantly. All right, starting to run out of juice a little bit. Let me quickly finish off number 20. Hard work is a liability, my friends. Hard work is very important. You absolutely do need it in order to be successful. But again, don't rely too much on it. You want to be always looking for ways to embrace efficiency in your hard work application. Where can you hack out the fluff? So that way it takes less work to do what is necessary to achieve the fundamental objectives of your goals. Number 21, I just don't want to, in quotes, is a perfectly acceptable answer for not doing something. A lot of times we come up with these excuses like, I don't have time, I don't have money, because we think that person's going to judge me if I don't want to go to the gym or I don't want to do this thing or whatever. But saying, I just don't want to is perfectly fine, because we all recognize it. Sometimes you just don't want to do the thing. And that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable to do that. It's not a sign of weakness. It just simply means that you're disciplined about establishing your priorities. Last two, number 22, life isn't fair. It's balanced. So when we expect life to be fair, like, oh, it's easier for that person, how come it's so hard for me and everything? Yeah, exactly. Life isn't fair, my friends. It's balanced. The adaptations we have about our body are about regaining homeostatic balance. It's not about fairness from one person to the other. That's a human imaginative concept. We dreamed it up out of thin air. But balance is the fundamental principle that governs everything in the universe. So when we go by things of we're trying to use things in a balanced way rather than a fair way, then we get much more control and understanding about how things are actually working. And finally, number 23 of 23 lessons that could potentially change your life for 2023 is listen more, ask more questions, and talk slower. I know I'm talking a mile a minute here because my laptop battery is about to die, but if there's anything that can improve our relationships to one another and interactions with one person, it's listening more, actively listening, not just looking for when we can respond and jump in with our own 2 cents, but learning to really honestly consume what that person is saying. Take it in, asking questions so you can continue to take more in. And then when you do talk, talking slower and in a very thoughtful way can help establish a stronger rapport and connection with your fellow human beings. There you go, 23 lessons to help you be living better in 2023. Let me know if you have questions. As always, thank you everybody for coming on in. Remember, the sponsor for this week's episode is the new Push-Pull Squat program, available on Amazon Kindle and the RDP merch store on PDF. The links are down below. It's probably the best $5 you're going to spend in the next 5 weeks or 5 years even, potentially. It's going to make your training for building muscle and strength a lot simpler and a lot more direct, while giving you also the freedom to do things your own way. So thanks again. Have a happy new year, and I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.